This weapon doesn't explode, doesn't fire bullets, and costs less than $20. Yet on Ukraine's front lines, it's outsmarting Russian drones and flipping the script on high-tech warfare. As drones dominate the battlefield from kamikaze FPVs to long-range loitering munitions, stopping them has become just as critical as launching them. Ukraine's defenses now include everything from billion-dollar Patriots to DIY shotguns mounted on quadcopters. But this is something else entirely: the Aero Trawl. Yes, it's another modified drone, but here's the twist. It doesn't just bring drones down, it captures them mid-air and delivers them intact to Ukrainian forces. Best of all, for Ukraine's cash-strapped military, the Aerotrol costs less than $20 and is simple to mass produce. And just when you thought Ukraine's drone war couldn't get more creative, this changes everything. Now, if you're into how low-cost battlefield hacks are rewriting modern warfare, hit subscribe to the Military Show. We break down the tactics shaping tomorrow's conflicts. So let's unpack how the Aerotrol actually works and why it could be a game changer for Ukraine's frontline troops. Ukraine's fight against Russian drones takes place in two distinct theaters. On the one hand, the nation must fend off nightly long-range attacks by Russian missiles and kamikaze German drones on its cities and key infrastructure far behind the front lines. Here, it uses a combination of missile-based systems like the Patriot and Iris-T, air-to-air missiles fired by its fighter jets and helicopters, electronic warfare devices, and mobile vehicle-mounted machine gun-based systems like the German Gepard. All of these are backed by a network of radar, thermal, and even acoustic detection systems that identify and track the incoming threats to be shot down. On the other hand, it must deal with the spectre of drones on the front lines. There are two sides to this equation: reconnaissance and kamikaze FPV drones. For both sides, reconnaissance drones are a critical part of operations on and just behind the battlefield. Since Russia first invaded Ukraine in February 2022, Russian reconnaissance drones have been scanning the battlefield and surrounding areas and identifying targets for Russian artillery, glide bombs, and drones to strike. All the while, Ukrainian reconnaissance drones have been performing the same roles. The most commonly used Russian reconnaissance drone is the Orlan-10, a mass-produced low-cost fixed-wing drone used extensively by Russia for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, or ISR missions since 2010. It can be launched via catapult and is operated directly by Russian artillery units, ideal for the rapid targeting of Ukrainian positions. The Orlan-10 is equipped with a variety of sensors, including electro-optical and infrared cameras, with some variants carrying the Lear-3 electronic warfare system, which is capable of jamming radio and cellular signals within a 3.7-mile radius. Russia also uses the 4-post and 4-post-R reconnaissance drones in Ukraine. These are medium-altitude, long-endurance drones based on the Israeli Searcher Mk2, used for surveillance, but also capable of carrying small laser-guided bombs in their combat variant. Ukraine must also contend with the Zastava short-range surveillance drone, which is also based on an Israeli system, the IAI Birdeye 400, the Covert Ops Optimized Tachyon Flying Wing drone, and the Zala 421 16E5 HD, a commercial-grade fixed-wing drone used for infrastructure inspection and as an artillery spotter. These drones keep nearby rear areas under constant watch, hunting for Ukrainian tanks, artillery, communications gear, electronic warfare systems, and especially in recent months, UAV operators and launching points. So, it's of critical importance to Ukraine to bring down these spotter drones as soon as possible. Robbing the enemy of its eyes provides a substantial tactical advantage. It provides Ukrainian forces with the freedom to entrench themselves in positions, maneuver, and transport supplies to frontline units without fear of being spotted and hammered within minutes. Initially, Ukrainian infantry on the front lines primarily used pump-action shotguns and short-range portable electronic warfare kits to bring down these drones. These kits jammed the radio signals used to control the Russian drones, causing them to miss their targets, crash, or in some cases, fly back to their starting positions harmlessly. It's rare these days to find Ukrainian infantry on the front lines without electronic warfare or EW kits and shotguns. They've become standard issue for tank and artillery crews and communications units as well. However, their effectiveness is limited. Firstly, the sheer length of the line of combat makes blanket EW coverage extremely difficult and very expensive. By September 2025, according to Ukraine's top military commander, General Alexander Syrsky, the line of contact had grown to around 800 miles. That's an increase of around 125 miles over the preceding year, which has forced Ukraine to manage between 160 and 190 combat engagements daily. Ukrainian EW systems like the Bukovel AD can jam drone signals for up to 12.5 miles, but frontline deployment typically requires portable, trench-mounted units with shorter ranges of 1 to 3 miles. That means for continuous coverage, such systems must be deployed every couple of miles, especially in high-threat sectors. Analysts estimate that, with an average of 1.25 miles of coverage for each EW system, Ukraine would need around 600 network systems to cover the entire line of combat effectively. Portable EW jammers and more advanced systems like Bukovel cost anywhere from $500 to $10,000, with most between $1,000 and $3,000. If we assume an average cost of around $2,000, that means Ukraine would need around $1.2 million for the EW equipment alone. Add redundancy, maintenance, operator training, and integration with command systems to that, and the total cost will likely be in the region of $1.5 to $2 billion. Shotguns, on the other hand, are far cheaper and much more abundant. In addition to shotguns imported from the US and Turkey, in May 2025, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense authorized 3 modifications of domestically produced pump-action shotguns for operational use within the defense forces. These Ukrainian-made 12-gauge pump-action shotguns are chambered for 76mm shells, which can be loaded with either slugs or shot. When loaded with shot, they've proven to be effective at hitting UAVs at close range, especially as the drones approach their targets. While it's unclear how much these Ukrainian shotguns cost, new pump-action shotguns typically go for roughly $200 to $350, so they're relatively cheap as weapon systems go. However, they're really a last resort kinetic solution against drones, and thus not the kind of weapons you'd want to base your anti-drone defenses around. Ukraine would literally need tens of thousands of shotguns at a minimum to adequately equip all its frontline forces, with costs running into the tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars. Even then, while the spread of a shot-filled shotgun round increases the probability of a single round hitting a Russian drone, they still require human skill and composure, which is not always possible in frantic, chaotic battlefield conditions. Sometime in 2024, Ukraine figured out a solution, using its own FPV drones to strike Russian reconnaissance drones. They could use these cheap, abundant, and deadly quadcopters to take down Russian kamikaze quadcopters, and its much larger, more expensive reconnaissance drones like the Orlan-10. With its annual production of these FPV quadcopters estimated to be in the millions of units, Ukraine had plenty of these drones, which typically cost just a few $100s to put to this task. The strategy proved to be a keeper. Initially, Ukrainian drone pilots were bringing down Russian UAVs kinetically, simply by launching modified FPV drones at them and ramming them. Over time, explosives were attached to these mini interceptor drones, so they were not just knocking Russian reconnaissance drones out of the sky with force, but blowing them up. But there was still a limitation. The strategy may be effective at destroying Russian drones, but it destroys the Ukrainian interceptor drone in the process. It's essentially a drone-for-drone swap, with no way to save the drone for future operations. Ukraine's solution? Mounting shotguns directly onto Ukrainian drones. These drones could be launched, the attached shotgun fired at the target, and then flown back in one piece after the engagement, ready for redeployment on the next mission. However, initial efforts exposed new problems. Shotgun-equipped drones can only fire 1 or 2 shells before needing to be reloaded, and if the recoil is poorly balanced, the force of the shot can overturn the drone in flight, causing it to crash. This is where the protagonist of our story enters the arena. Andrei Pavlovsky is a Ukrainian engineer who developed one of the first drone shotguns. He'd been involved in weapons development from the outset of the invasion, building logistics and bomb disposal robots for friends on the front lines. But when the skies became the new battlefield, he pivoted to designing tools to take down Russian FPV and reconnaissance drones. His first success was to develop and patent a recoil-free shotgun shell that produces almost no perceptible kick for the drone platform when fired in mid-air. The shell could be the solution to the recoil problem of Ukrainian drone shotguns. However, in the background, Pavlovsky had been working on an even simpler device, the Aero Trawl. And as mentioned earlier, the Aero Trawl doesn't just shoot down Russian drones, it also enables their capture and transfer to Ukrainian intelligence. Initially, Pavlovsky focused on his recoil-free shotgun round because he believed it had more potential. However, as it happens, the Aerotrol appears to have been the first of his inventions to be widely adopted. The device had been patented and is available on the Brave One market, a platform where Ukrainian forces can manage procurement of the supplies they need in a decentralized manner for roughly $18.50 each. According to Pavlovsky, several hundred devices have already been supplied to frontline military units so that they can develop tactics for their use, train their drone operators, and provide feedback for further refinement of the system. It's reportedly already in use against Russian reconnaissance and FPV drones, as well as ambush UAVs. These are typically fiber optic cable-guided FPV drones that Russians leave on standby along roads. When they detect Ukrainian vehicles or forces moving down the road, they spring into action and attack them, often taking their targets by complete surprise. So, how does this innovative system work, and what makes it such a compelling option? In a nutshell, instead of firing bullets, shells, or missiles at them, the Aerotrol is a device that attaches to a carrier drone and captures Russian drones in a kind of trawl net. Visually, it looks much like a sea trawl, the nets used by fishing vessels or by warships to sweep for mines. Now, the concept of using netting to trap drones is not revolutionary in and of itself. Various net-based systems already exist, with several known to have seen action in Ukraine. The most well-known of these systems is probably the Drone Hunter F700 from Fortum Technologies. This autonomous VTOL drone uses a trademark net-based system called NetGuns to launch rapidly expanding nets at hostile drones. It has two variants, a small net for attack mode, which targets Group 1 and 2 FPV-type drones, and a larger net for defense mode, i.e. intercepting larger, faster fixed-wing drones like German drones. The captured drone is tethered and brought to a safe landing, from where forensic analysis can be conducted. The Defend Air system from ParaZero Technologies is another multi-configurable net-based anti-drone system. It can be deployed via an interception drone, a stationary turret, or a handheld net gun, and captures drones mid-air using nets ranging in size from around 30 to 330 feet, at ranges of 6.5 to over 300 feet. It integrates with radar, C2 and RF systems, and is designed for low collateral damage in urban or sensitive areas. Other net-based systems have been designed for more tailored use cases. Skywall Patrol from OpenWorks Engineering, for example, is a purely handheld system that fires a net attached to a parachute to ensure a controlled descent of the captured drone, minimizing damage to it, which allows for safe recovery for intelligence gathering. Similarly, Iron Drone from Ondas is an AI-enabled automated drone that uses ballistic nets and parachutes to capture and safely lower hostile drones. Russia has also experimented with net-based anti-drone systems, which, as we'll see shortly, played a part in the development of Aerotrol. Its Net Comet systems consist of small interceptor drones that launch nets to entangle Ukrainian drones mid-air. And both the Russian and Ukrainian sides have made extensive use of anti-drone fishing nets strung up above key logistic routes to prevent the other side's drones from swooping down and hitting traffic moving along them. With these and other net-based systems already on the market, Aerotrol has plenty of competition, but it also has several key features that give it a pronounced competitive edge over all of these more illustrious, well-funded and costly options. For starters, The device is purely mechanical, with no electronics on board, and is mounted on a quadcopter with a 10 to 15-inch frame. Except for the fishing net strung over roads, the other net-based anti-drone systems in service include electronic components, which raise the costs and complicate assembly. Additionally, all the other systems, including the Russian one, use variations of relatively standard mesh nets. Aerotrol uses vertical slings instead, thin, high-strength cords designed to snare the propellers of enemy drones rather than catch the whole thing. The entire system weighs just over 10.5 ounces, significantly lighter than a shotgun interceptor, which typically weighs around 5 times as much. The lightness of the device means it has minimal impact on the carrier drone's flight and performance compared to some of the other systems, whose electronic components and heavier nets significantly increase their weight. The Aerotrol sling structure also has no impact on the UAV's aerodynamics, and the thinness of the sling means it can be nearly invisible to enemy operators, especially at distance, or with the Kevlar variant that Pavlovsky has tested. It's also dead simple to use. Aerotrol can be attached to a drone in about 1 minute using ties or clips, and is deployed from the moment of takeoff. In an exclusive interview with the Ukrainska Pravda website, Pavlovsky broke down exactly how it operates. First, the enemy reconnaissance drone is detected, either by radar or visually. A command is then given to take off and move towards the target. Obviously, the Aerotrol is most effective when the carrier UAV is equipped with a thermal imaging camera, as this allows the operator to clearly see the enemy quadcopter and approach it. There can be as many approaches as necessary to capture the target. At the moment of capture, the Russian pilot has no idea what's happening. The troll cannot be seen from a distance, and even if the camera is pointed at the Ukrainian drone, it's too late to do anything. Another aspect of the Aerotrol that sets it apart from the other net-based systems is that it's specifically designed for use as a defensive tool, and primarily above Ukrainian positions on or just behind the front lines. As Pavlovsky puts it, this system is for assault and infantry units constantly in the trenches, where enemy reconnaissance drones are a major problem. Adding, "I also focus on special forces on frontline missions." In contrast, most of the other net-based systems are intended for dual use, offense and defense, and in a wider range of locations, such as to defend infrastructure from long-range German drones. In this defensive frontline role, Aerotrol offers 2 options for drone engagement. Either the troll can be detached after the Russian drone has been snared, causing it to fall immediately, or the captured UAV can be transported to the rear by the carrier drone and recovered for research once its battery runs flat. But perhaps the greatest benefits provided by Aerotrol to Ukrainian troops on the front lines are its cost and scalability. Compared to some of the other systems, that $18.50 per unit is ridiculous. The Skywall 100 handheld launcher cost around $20,000, and that's excluding the actual net projectile. The Defend Air and Drone Hunter systems are estimated to cost tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars each. And even the Ukrainian Varta Drone Hunter, a kinetic shotgun-based drone interceptor, priced at a relatively humble $325, is still 17 times more expensive than Aerotrol. Needless to say, at under $20 a unit, Aerotrol offers a very compelling cost-to-kill ratio. According to Pavlovsky, right now, a Russian ambush drone costs roughly $1,000 to $1,500, and a DJI Matrix 4T about $5,000. It's got to hurt watching your much more expensive drones being taken out by such a cheap, simple device. And that's exactly what the Russians are being forced to do. According to Pavlovsky, a Ukrainian military unit that mastered his system was able to shoot down 14 Russian UAVs in 15 sorties using the Aerotrol. That's an excellent kill rate by any measure. Meanwhile, development and refinement of the system continue based on battlefield experience. Pavlovsky has adapted the Aerotrol to carry explosive charges for laying mines and targeting larger, even more expensive targets like antennas, stationary communications towers, and artillery barrels. Tests at a training range demonstrated that the drone can effectively attach the charge and move away before it detonates. He's also been experimenting with different materials for the slings, with Kevlar proving to be very promising. The slings, are completely invisible in the sky, both from the ground and from a drone's camera, he says, adding that only at a distance of about 3 meters, around 10 feet, could the operator of a drone that was being captured spot them. In the end, we opted for larger slings. They make the system even cheaper. The idea for the system was in part inspired by the Russian Net Comet system, or rather its limitations. The Russian drone's rectangular design creates a sail effect, reducing its maneuverability at high speeds and making it harder to control. The net itself can be blown backwards or moved off course by the wind. That means you need a high level of pilot skill and the right weather conditions for it to be effective. But even then, the vertical net prevents the drone from transporting captured UAVs back to its positions or from delivering explosives for separate strikes. The Ukrainian Dronarium Drone Academy team, which showcased a similar design in Japan in 2015 and experienced similar issues, was also an inspiration for Pavlovsky and was involved in Aero Trawl's development. I was able to solve the issues of that decade-old design by taking a completely new approach, he recalled. We ran some tests with experts from the Dronarium Training Academy. They showed great interest, and I proposed incorporating the Aero Trawl drone capture system into the Academy's training program. With so many benefits to offer the Ukrainian military and such impressive first steps, the next step in Aero Trawl's evolution is serial production. But in this regard, Pavlovsky is certainly going to need a few more hands on deck. A single person with no technical training can produce up to 10 Aero Trawls per day, but until now, he's been making all of them by himself. Plans are indeed afoot to scale up production. And who knows, maybe the next time we report on Aerotrol, it'll be as one of Ukraine's, and most possibly many of its allies, most proliferated and well-known weapons. We'll of course keep you updated on all the latest developments in drone warfare. So subscribe to the channel and enable notifications so you don't miss any of it. Thanks for watching.